do you know what a great thing about earning that no one ever mentions? It's a two-way street. You give something to get something. That's why the Bible says you must earn your daily bread. You must provide something called labor to receive something called income. So it teaches you to get your daily bread, you must earn to receive. And so you need to produce to receive. And this is why I hate people like Kathy. She was not good. And ask David why he hated his sister. And he changed things, but why he hated? Because what they did, and he hated her. He cut her off and distanced himself from her. Why? Because she didn't look to get off of her disabilities to rehabilitate. She looked to take her disabilities to use it to milk the system, including him, out of as much money as they could get, out of as much benefits, out of as much freebies, out of as much sympathy. And so they didn't use the income to help themselves get off the disability, to figure out ways to overcome their challenges. They took it a different way. They stayed disabled so they could milk people by having people feel sorry for them to take as much as they could get. And I'm sorry, that's what the black population does now. And they've been doing it for a while. Instead of figuring out how to educate, and this is why I give the Asian community much more props. They come in and they don't want to be on a welfare roll. They don't want to milk the country. Truly. Now, I'm not saying all Asians. Believe me, Alex and that, Jen, there were Asians that were milking the system. So, make no mistake about that. But overwhelmingly, not true. It was a few minorities that were doing it. So, these people don't take urban ministry and go into the system to figure out, how can I use the resources to get over my challenge so I can be productive and earn my daily bread? How can I be sanctified? That's why all bums burn in fucking hell. They're pieces of shit. So, those that have no path, like I said, when in 2005, when I went up to Will's wedding, I went to the homeless in LA. And I was with a huge group of homeless people. And I was talking to them. And they were telling me about their different issues. And I gave them guidance on how to solve their problems. And they were all ears. They're like, oh, that's right. I can do that. Oh, that's right. I can go over here, and that will solve the problem. Like I was talking to one guy. He had this legal issue that was preventing him from getting a job. And he said he had a problem with the prosecutor. And I gave him a solution. I don't remember exactly. And he's like, oh, I can go to City Hall and do that, what you said. And that should solve the problem. And once I get that, it'll be easy for me to get a job and I'll be off the street. Thank you. And one after one I was talking to, and these people were actually looking for solutions. But I've done this with others. But in Chicago, it doesn't seem, and I've been talking this when I did pads and everything else, that I only work with the up and out population. And any of those that want to stay in the shit, I spit on and curse. What did Jesus work with? Only those that have a come to Jesus moment and want to repent and move away from sin and move in the way of sanctification. They don't want to rob, lie, cheat, steal, deceive, play ignorant. They don't want to be some fucking... And you have a lot of scam artists back in Jesus' day. You think you have scam artists now. Scam artists were huge back in Jesus' day. There were all kinds of unbelievable thieves. And remember, we're talking back then. What was their formal education? Most of them, none. What was their ability to create? Truly, very limited. Today, you have free formal education from elementary school through high school. And you have lots of ability to gather tools to be able to provide for yourself. So God doesn't see it the same way Jesus, and that's what you misunderstand in the Bible. You think you read the Bible and same. Not same. You have much more. You know much more. Even if your IQ isn't as high, you have better information than they do. They thought the earth was flat back then. Yeah, the flat earth theory was still the prominent theory back in Jesus' day. They believed if you went too far with the ship, you'd fall off the earth. In Jesus' day, they didn't understand the earth was round. The flat earth, and look, it didn't happen. It was in Christopher Columbus' day still. Way after Jesus. They still believed the earth was flat. And that you could go in one direction and eventually you would reach an end and fall off the earth. You have better information than they have ever had. And you could have the same IQ, but the information you have is much more valuable. You are given way more than they ever. You have greater understanding even at the same intelligence level. Even somebody in the 1970s. So you have a high IQ back then. Plato, Aristotle, whatever. But you have much more information than they did. They did it with unbelievably less information. They didn't have satellites studying the earth or anything else. And so the stuff that you're taught is incredibly more valuable. You have more precision to make more correct decisions than ever. So when I see the bombs, I hope they get fucking burned. meaning God throws them into hell and burns them. And when I see the tailgaters, I believe they should have their brains blown out. They have no right. They know better than ever right and wrong. Back then, they didn't. Truly, they didn't have defined laws and defined structures that gave them all this guidance on what was right and wrong. It was a survival at all costs, not survival of the fittest, survival in any way. So, again, you have much more knowledge. You're born into the system, no matter what country. You have greater knowledge, greater understanding of right and wrong than ever before. So God is going to put you to fucking waste. And when you come up and you do something disrespectful to me, He doesn't give a fuck if you don't even know me. You have greater knowledge of right and wrong more than ever fucking before. So there is no forgiveness. That's why I told you, He doesn't care if you claim ignorance. He's going to slaughter you. So I just put this out on Tumblr. And so He doesn't give a fuck anymore. You're fucking scum. You have zero fucking excuses. You're a deadbeat fucking husband because you didn't grab, and there's aisles at the library of books that you can read on being a parent. You can get Parent Today. You can get magazines. You can get a lot of books. Me and Jen did a lot of education on being a couple. Oh, we did a lot of education. You can go to premarital counseling. God doesn't fucking care what your excuses are anymore. You fuck up, you die. Because the access to the right information is right at the tips of your finger. There wasn't the internet where you can search something like Pete used to do. I didn't search that much, actually. But Pete did in 2002 and that. He used to use the internet search to search everything and confirm it. But he cares about getting it right. And so he searches and reads and confirms. Getting it fucking right matters. Excellence before God. So everybody has a fucking pocket computer to check the information. Now, the internet's not perfect, but you have multiple sources, and you have the ability to cross-check. So, you have less excuses than ever fucking before. He hates your fucking guts. So when you do me wrong, I guarantee you, you're going to burn in hell. And I think every fucking black person in Chicago is going to fucking burn. Instead of them repatriating, doing right by me, they said the last 10 years, they decide to terrify me, to do wrong by me. They weren't out cleaning my shit, but I was at Urban Ministries and all that, cleaning their fucking toilets, making them food, truly at pads, truly taking care of the bathroom, cleaning the bathroom, staying up all night, making them fucking food. They didn't do any of this shit to me. So I believe all black people in this fucking city are to be slaughtered upon their death. They deserve it. And I turned a blind eye to them putting guns at my head, fucking stealing from me, breaking into my fucking shit. They're fucking low-life pieces of fucking dirtbags. You are what you fucking do. So it pisses me off. I watch with Asian churches, with white churches, and some Hispanics worked at Covenant. Like I used to do urban ministry with a Hispanic guy. And he was pissed because they wanted, selection. And he told me, he said, when my kids, I put the plate down in front of them, and my kids say, can I have something else? And he says, yeah, that something else will be nothing this evening. Go to bed. Go to your room. Stay in there. Go to sleep, and I'll see you in the morning. When I put the food down in front of you, no matter what it is, you're eating it. You haven't earned your right to have selection yet. And he say, these people at the shelter, and we're not talking they have medical conditions, that because of a medical condition, he wasn't talking about that. He was talking about them not wanting the food and wanting something else. Not because of any medical condition, because they wanted choice. And he said, you're not in a situation to be a chooser. You're a beggar. And no, he didn't say this to people at Urban Ministries. It was a conversation between me and him, not to any of them. He was just bearing his frustration. He's like, these mother effers, they want selection? I have to go and bust my ass every day to put meals on my freaking table, and I'm here volunteering, giving them an opportunity to do better. Instead, count your blessings. This is not North Korea. So I see all this. It's a bunch of fucking bullshit. They can knock on the door at the Salvation Army. Do you know I used to pick up homeless people around Chicago and take them to the Salvation Army? Take them to Pacific Gardens. Take them to Urban Ministry. Offering them the opportunity to get off the street. And the shelters, they were open to receiving them. Truly, they were open to receiving them. So I gave them every opportunity to get off the street. And what I got was, nah, we like out here, everybody feels sorry for us. That we just raise our cup, and then we could go to this place for free meal, that place for free meal, and everybody feels sorry for us. So we like the pity. We don't have to do anything. We can throw our garbage here, throw our garbage there. Truly. And I used to carry food in my trunk for them. And I used to pull over, open my trunk, and have different types of food. But it was all sealed in wrappers and everything else, and I ate it because I used to come down here and had very little money, and so I used to travel with different types of food in my trunk, and I would also pack a cooler with me with food. And I would open up, and I have nothing. And I'm going through massive health issues, and I would pull over and say, okay, you're hungry, you're starving, you say no opportunity. I say, okay, here's some food. And this black guy looks at this and he's like, I'm not eating this shit. But you say you're starving and hungry. People around the world will eat worms, will eat insects. And they will. And in North Korea, they even went to cannibalism and ate other dead people so they could live. So here I'm giving you not worms, not ants, not cockroaches. And look around the world and see. And I'm giving you protein bars. Oh, I didn't give them garbage at all. They were granola bars, different protein bars, good stuff. Trying to help them be healthier. I don't want them to become a diabetic or have a diabetic incident. So I have to be mindful. I don't give them high sugars, heavy gluten stuff. So here I am being very mindful. And remember, I'm eating it myself, so I want to get healthier. And so I wasn't diabetic back then, even at 340 pounds. But these people don't understand. But if you hear Ms. Park, but I already know this as a truth because my friends worked in India and other places. And here they're eating these insects and everything else just to stay alive. In Paris, they ate pigeons. And this goes back to before. They ate escargot and all this. But that was because it was to stay alive with the wars going on, with Napoleon and everything else, and the troops and so on, that the poor really had struggles providing for themselves their daily bread. So these people, they're not like other people in other countries. They'll eat the cockroaches just to stay alive. They'll eat the insects just to stay alive. Here, I'm giving them good stuff. They get to go to PADS, Urban Ministry, Pacific Gardens, Salvation Army. Those are 4 shelters. PADS, Urban Ministry, Pacific Gardens, and Salvation Army. So they have 4 shelter systems, and they give them good food. They're not eating insects or anything. So they have this opportunity here to get off their feet, to get in good health, to get job training, to move forward. So don't give me this shit anymore with these people. It's a bunch of fucking bullshit. It's truly a bunch of fucking bullshit. They're fucking scumbag pieces of shit. And every time, like, I see the black community, the black girl begging in Chinatown now, just outside, and I think, wow, black people every day, I think of them more and more as scumbags, as pieces of fucking waste, pieces of fucking garbage. They have all this opportunity that this one girl, in order to live, Ms. Park, but I studied the guy who was in the 3-generation camp before him. I posted him on Facebook. I knew about those camps. No one here knew about those camps. And a girl I work with, Mary, used to help North Korean refugees. But I knew about the 3-generation camp before she did. Because when he first got out of it, it was the first time they ever knew the camp existed. And when he was escaping, they were executing his mother and brother for stealing food. They were killing them. And remember how food was a very scarce commodity, and stealing food was a big no-no. You know, the famine that killed millions in North Korea. So the United States, what have you learned from that? That when we take out a partner, and think about Cuba, when the fall of the Soviet Union and everything caused a lot of Cubans to fall into great poverty because they weren't getting subsidies from the Soviets. Cuba was more of a hermit kingdom as well. Cut off from everybody around them. It was very hard for the Cubans to make money to have a better life. So they were kind of like North Korea, but not as isolated. But still, they had starvation and famine. Because when the wall fell, they lost these possibilities of support for their people. And our government doesn't understand. When you take out regimes, or like China changes, and China gave very little support to North Korea, but they had primary support from the Soviet Union. But when it fell, it wasn't giving these subsidies anymore. These countries were on their own. And that's where we have to realize we have an obligation to step in and help those countries basically turn a negativity into a positivity and prevent great starvations and great tragedies. So even like now, Cuba, we should be mending things with Cuba and giving them opportunity. Castro's dead. That whole regime really is dead. That whole way of life is dead. And so Cuba should be moving to capitalism very quickly. Because I watched Castro, it fell. His brother took over and it failed. So Cuba was moving towards capitalism and starting to export. And we have a base right there in Cuba that provides us intelligence on the Cuban people. Guantanamo Bay. So we have to help them through our charitable arms, not giving them stuff, giving them opportunity to build a better life. So giving them agricultural technology and other things that help them build industries. And it's not even for export. You can just build their local economies, their infrastructure, so they can trade between themselves, their internal economy. So they can grow all kinds of different things in Cuba. And they have fishing industry and many other things, and then developing their energy industry and their medical industry, and helping them start producing medical products for themselves. and helping them get a fairly sustainable community. So, again, Cuba should be open for business again and moving towards capitalism. So, I don't go the way of the old. I'm done with feeling sorry for black people. I spit on them. Sorry for them. They've given 107, I think it's 101, 107 all-black schools, all-black dorms, all-black this, all-black that, fucking government aid this way, charitable aid this way. Every fucking group, my Arab group, gave to black people. My Chinese group gave to black people. I have a Hispanic giving to black people. Everybody giving them an opportunity. So, I'm done with it. Why? Because they decided to fucking beat me up over the last 10 fucking years. Continuously, males and females attacking me. So I say, and I'll put this in the video, fuck you, black people. I'm right next to a black person. I have no respect for them anymore. So coming around here and seeing this, where are all the black sororities? Like the movie I'm seeing, The Prince of Bel-Air, the remake, and he comes from some fraternity, and he's a head prosecutor in Los Angeles. We have the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Why isn't he working with the homeless on the street in Chicago? He's the mayor of Chicago. Shouldn't he be doing outreach and figuring out, hey, brother or sister, why are you homeless? And we have social services and everything else I can deploy. How about the mayor getting in his car, driving around the city, and addressing the homeless population and ending it? Because he could do that. A white lady years ago moved into the ghetto to give black people another chance, called Mayor Jane Byrne. So I didn't see the black female mayor. I didn't see Harold Washington doing that. Let's go back to Harold Washington. I didn't see him doing that. So where is the mayor going into the shelters, going in inspecting the shelters, going in inspecting these populations that are suffering? And like Mayor Jane Byrne, she lived in the ghetto. She lived in Cabrini Green. She moved in. I played the Cabrini Green All-Stars. They built them a beautiful baseball field, giving them every opportunity. Now, she could have done better, but at least she made an effort and moved in. Now, I give Mayor Daley, when he moved into the South Loop, it was poor. And he reformed the South Loop. So when I see the black girl, why the fuck should I help her? Shouldn't it be Mayor Brandon Johnson reaching out and saying, sister? She's a black lady, and so she's a soul sister, as they say. Hey, soul sister, I'm Mayor Brandon Johnson. I'd like to know how we can assist you with this situation to remove you from the streets. And I have to tell you that vagrancy is illegal So if you don't take my diversion program, I'm going to have to force you into the penal system, and then we can work on solving your problems through the penal system, because they will give you medical assessment, mental evaluation, and everything, and figure out what's going on. So we'll use the vagrancy laws to bring you into the structure to make the evaluations so we can bring you to a better life. Not to enslave you or destroy you, but to help you get a better life. And we have to force it upon you because you're unwilling to go. Or you could do it the willing way, and I could hook you up with Pacific Gardens, Urban Ministry, Salvation Army, PADS, and many of the other shelter systems. And we can assign you a social worker in that and help get you off the street. But where is Mayor Brandon Johnson doing this? Here, I go by this fish house right here, Lawrence Fish Market, and there's all these black people in here that work here. And the guy that owns it's a white guy who goes to David's church. They could do outreach and say, hey, little sister, you know, we need some delivery people. Or we need some people to do this, and we can give you a job and work with Salvation Army, and you'll get your housing and everything from the Salvation Army and your employment from us. So they'll take care of it, working with Goodwill. If you need clothing or anything, the Salvation Army stores. Also, there's Goodwill. And then there's the White Elephant, which is another that provides stuff as well. And yes, they need to provide stuff from the dollar store in that. So if you need aspirin or you need hygienic products, you can go to the dollar store. They have it. They have toothbrush, toothpaste, everything you need, and we'll give you a voucher to go there and buy your hygienic products. And you can pick up little knickknacks and everything else. So if you have acne problems, they have acne medication. If you have, you know, athlete's feet, they have stuff for athlete's feet. Or if you have skin problems, if you need some vitamin supplements, it's all right there at the dollar store. Dirt cheap. Now $1.50. Not $1.25. But we'll take you over there, and Urban Ministries and PADS and that should have a shuttle, and they bring them over, and they go get their supplies, what they need for their hygiene products and that. We used to give them free at PADS. I did PADS, and we provide them toothpaste, toothbrush, facial soap, you name it, tampons, maxi pads, all their hygiene products, making sure they can clean themselves. And at PADS, there were wash machines and dryers for them to do their clothes and everything else. So, same thing with the Salvation Army and Urban Ministry and all that. So they have showers and everything. So, again, he can set you up, and then we can get you with a city social worker. and they can work with you. And if you need therapy in that, we can get you into counseling. So we're here. So you can take the diversion program, or we can arrest you and put you through the system. But vagrancy was designed to solve the homeless problem. So people would get processed through the system, get medical and psychological evaluations, given their medications if they need medications, or if they have injuries, addressing their medical things. And then it acts as a temporary shelter, giving them their daily food, giving them showers and everything, addressing as they move them out of the system into the Salvation Army or halfway houses. So no, they either go willingly or they go to jail and they get processed that way. So where is Mayor Brandon Johnson doing his job, right? You think he cares about his race. I didn't see Jesse Jackson ever doing this with his Operation Push. All those years that I was doing this, and I did it independent of all those places, Simon knows, my small group knows, Pastor Rim knows, that I was working with the homeless with organizations and independent of organizations, trying to solve the problem. And I didn't have shit for resources. But the mayor of Chicago, he can mandate social workers to do things. He can do all of that. So, do you think he ever gets out of his castle and gets on the street? Because I've never seen any. Now, Jane Byrne moved into the projects, but I didn't see Jane Byrne working with the homeless or anything. So I didn't see her down there. And truly, the mayor going, okay, I'm going to show up in this neighborhood that has a lot of gang activity. And I'm going to go down there with my area commanders and the chief of police. I want the area commander, the chief of police, and we're going to go down into the hood where they're dealing drugs. And I'm going to knock on doors and say, hey, I'm the mayor of Chicago. And we have a drug dealing problem in this neighborhood. And that I'm here to solve the problem. And I'm here with my chief and area commanders and that. And we'll give you a diversion program, or we're going to lock you up. But Pete did this in his neighborhood. He kept, every time he saw them standing on the corner, he would call 911 immediately. My friend Pete, he cleaned up his whole neighborhood of street-dealing drug dealers. He would watch the corners, and when he saw them on the corners, he would call the police immediately and describing them, and they're on the corners, and this is a well-being or safety check. And so he would call the police continuously, and every time they were out there, he would notify the police. The drug dealers are back on the corner, back doing their stuff, and they would roll up and they would arrest them. And eventually, just like Home Depot, now here's a corporation. The head of Home Depot went into the Chicago Police Department and told them, we're going to build a store here, but not until you clean up the neighborhood. Because we don't want the street people deterring people from coming into our store. We want to feel them safe and feel this is a good neighborhood. So I lived there on Troop and North Avenue, and they had the paddy wagons, and every night they were arresting people. Now, the thing is, you got to give them diversion programs, and they didn't. They're like, okay, we're going to do a blood test on you. And they can court mandate it, and they do the blood test to see if they're on heroin or cocaine or PCP or anything like that. They need to do this at jails, or they can do the breath analysis. But the thing is, it's not to put them away further, to get them a diversion program. Now you know they're using heroin, and you can give them methadone, but you can get them on a diversion program. So when you're taking them in, you have to do the blood work and all that. That's part of the vagrancy. You have to do the full medical, the full physical. That includes the panels, because you have to know if they have STDs and everything else. But some reason they don't do that when they take people into prison. And this has been our problem as well. But they have to do this when they take them into a shelter. They have to have a room that's a isolation area, and they take them in, and they'll be in there for a couple days while they do their full physical, run their blood work and everything else, make sure they don't have any serious contagious diseases. If they have HIV or something else, then they can get them the medication and get it under control. Then once it's under control, then they can release them into the general population. But they don't do this in prison. That's why they spread diseases throughout the prison. Because the inmates come in and they just throw them in prison without assessing them medically. And if they're an alcoholic or if they're a drug addict, that's part of the physical. Noticing track marks, noticing if they're using heroin or anything else. So when they come in, they can get them into diversion programs. So they're part of Narcotics Anonymous, Celebrate Recovery. And then they can give them, if they want, small group. But the diversion programs are mandatory. So they have to go to their AA meetings in prison, or their AA and NA meetings. They might have to go to both. They have alcohol problems and drug addiction, then they have to go to both. They can use Celebrate Recovery. It covers a lot of other types of addiction. So, again, they have to assess them, and they have to do physical and mental assessments. And get them in, figure out what's going on. And that's why the homeless shelter never worked. And I've been constantly preaching to them that bringing somebody in and giving them a meal, and I said this even as I volunteered to them, you're not a solution. You're not offering them job training like at PADS. You're not doing physical skill assessments. Do they have speech impairment? Do they stop and give them a speech therapist? Truly, giving them the solutions to solve the problem. The resources are there. As I pointed out, the government might not have them, but there's lots of charities that you can plug in. So they're all there to deal with issues. If it's weight management, there's charitable groups for that as well. And so they can plug them in because they have a weight problem that will lead to type 2 diabetes if they don't have it. Or if they have it, we want to manage the weight. We want to get them into counseling to get the medication down or the amount of insulin they're using down so they can be more functional, getting them into a better state of health. So this is why all those people went to prison, and the black community doesn't understand this, and the white community has the biggest amount of prisoners. The black is the largest by size to their population. They're 34%. The blacks are 12% of the population. But whites are 47% of the prison population. So those people pass diseases to each other because they're not assessed on the intake. They don't assess their drug problem, and that's why they have the drugs moving through the prisons. They don't do anything. They just take them off the street, they sentence them, and they throw them into prison. Not addressing the underlying issues. If they're a thief, they can have kleptomania, and they can go to counseling for kleptomania. Some of them are not kleptomaniacs. They're just thieves. So, again, they're willing. They don't have a drive like Winona. It's not Winona Ryder. It's, what's her name? The female movie star. She had kleptomania. She had a problem. She had more than enough money to pay for anything she wanted. Winona Ryder, I think it is. But the problem is she needed counseling. She needed therapy. That's why we have mental health facilities. And not in prison, outpatient. She just had to get over some reason she developed this addiction. And it was a thrill-seeking, but also it's a degrading, because when you get caught, you get punished. And so there's something going on that she needs this edge, but also a lot of times they want to be caught. And so it's like suicide. They don't do it to kill themselves. They do it to create a greater focus on themselves. And it's the loudest cry out they can do for help. So again, they're looking for somebody to pay attention, to help them through their issues, to get them into a better path. So I get pissed. And I don't understand that all this black leadership, I watched them focus all this money on the Jesse Jackson funeral. Shitloads of money, all these dignitaries speaking, everything, all that cost a shitload of money or was donated to them. And that means, yes, it cost money. But then I go around seeing the black girl, and it drives me fucking crazy. So you have so much money, and you're this Operation Push. You have so much money to throw an incredibly elaborate funeral for Jesse Jackson, spending a fortune. Where was it necessary to be that elaborate? That you couldn't use that focus to take care of the issues? So tell me when I've ever, my friend Michael King, he's Asian, he used to go over the Operation Push, and he was helping DACA kids. But the whole point is, they weren't doing any of this movement, Operation Breadbasket. how about Operation Teach 'em to Fish? I understand they need subsidies in the short term to stabilize them, to move them off of it, to move them into fully responsible, fully functional lives where they get free will and free choices. And they can pay for things, and they have dignity and respect, and they understand earning what you eat and providing for yourself. So I don't see these black leaders doing this. And like I said, Martin Luther King, okay, I agree. There's things that needed to be reformed. But the way he went about it, I disagree. But again, still, he was advocating for reform and doing it through peaceful movements. I agree with all of that. His heart was in the right place. His methods, well, not correct, but when he died, truly, his methods were not totally off. But hindsight's 20/20, and you're supposed to look at it and say, well, where did Dr. King fail, and how could we do things better than he did? He would have it no other way. He was trying to think of ways to improve his system. And so you look back at it and you tell the truth. Where it succeeded, what was successful, and it's a best practice thing. What was successful and effective that implemented correct changes that led to better situations and better life outcomes, meaning ended up with better life and lifestyle for black people. And where did it fail? And how can it be refined and improved? That's what's supposed to happen. So I see all these black leaders, Al Sharpton talking and that. And again, I didn't see him on the streets like night ministry. Has Mayor Brandon Johnson worked with night ministry? They do medical assessments at night ministry. Do you know that? And then there's the free clinics that night ministry wasn't working with that I told Julie Cho night ministry is a mobile medical unit that can team up with the free clinics to do medical assessments. So why doesn't the mayor have his aldermen out assessing things? Why aren't the aldermen showing up at the preschools, the elementary schools in their ward, the high schools in their ward, and if there's colleges, the same thing? And then why aren't they going to the different churches and mosques and Jewish temples and so on, and then eventually meeting with business leaders and then getting a feel for what's going on? Ask them in the schools, do you have students that are malnourished, that aren't getting enough subsidies? Or do you not have a program? Is obesity a problem? Is ADHD a problem? Truly. And then we can work with some organizations. There's like charities for everything. But also we can work with government agencies. We can team up a partnership between government agencies and charities to address the issue. But is the alderman out there, or is he sitting behind his desk doing nothing? He's supposed to manage the community. He's supposed to do ride-alongs with the police, captains and lieutenants, or an area commander, and truly assessing what's going on. Is this a high crime neighborhood? Are we having carjackings here? Are we having this issue here? They're supposed to be going out, looking at the potholes in the street, driving through with streets and sanitation, going there and saying, I want to know from streets and sanitation, I want to report. Are we having garbage problems? Do people not have enough trash cans? Are the sewer systems not working right? I want to, from the Department of Water, I want to hear from the Department of Water. How is the sewer system? How is the water pipes? Are they aging? I want to know from the utility companies, the People's Gas. I want a report from them. I want to know, how are the gas lines in the area? Are you having a lot of people falling behind on gas bills, not being able to pay? Where are those areas that people seem to have struggle with paying their gas bills? It's going to help People's Gas because I'm going to get you the money. But I need to know where the problems is that you have these people that aren't able to pay their utilities. The electrical company, the phone company, the cell companies. Truly, in these neighborhoods, T-Mobile, Verizon, Metro, Boost, whatever it may be, if I was alderman, I would want to know from those businesses working through the Chamber of Commerce. Every community, I assume there's a Chamber of Commerce down here. I'm on the south side. But I want to know if they're having pockets of people struggling to pay their cell phone bills. Because I want to know what's going on with my people. And how are they struggling? And figuring out what's causing that issue. Are we having high rates of domestic violence, alcoholism, drug abuse? What is driving the issue that's causing the problem? Because drugs are very expensive. And with that expensive habit, alcohol is very expensive. And so when you're abusing it, like my father did, he spent a fortune at the bar. And then my mother and father were alcoholics together. We would have had a really good life if they weren't alcoholics. Because they were spending so much money on booze. When I was a little kid, still, at times, it was very expensive to be an alcoholic. Way more expensive than buying milk and getting water. And we drank out of the tap. So, again, it was very expensive, these habits. Alcohol and drug abuse. It sucks. And this is another reason the black community doesn't understand why you can't have corner stores and little restaurants and that. Because all the money, and this is where the Hispanic community fails as well, that all that money, the reason why the North Shore is better, because most people aren't alcoholics or drug addicts, overwhelmingly. They don't have these negative habits. So they apply their money more effectively. Like, I'll look it up and put it on Tumblr, but I think the Asian population has an incredibly low rate of alcoholism and drug abuse. So that means when you have, and they already have the lowest rate of divorce, the Asian community. So you have two parents like Jen's. Father's still having a medical breakdown and couldn't work, but he took care of everything around the house. He did. He did the cleaning, he maintained the cars, he did all things around the house. And I don't think his wife respected that as much because she saw a man in a traditional role. But Jen, my ex, loved her father and saw him providing. Saw him doing all kinds of stuff around the house. Taking cleaning and everything else, stuff that her mother would do, but now she has the business and now he's the stay-at-home. So she didn't think of that from that mind point, that my husband took over my role and I took over my husband's role. And my husband isn't a failure, and he was successful. Jen had a very good opinion of her father. As she used to say to me, he does what he can. He takes my car, he gets it washed, he takes it to the mechanics, and he makes sure the tires are rotated, the brakes are done, and so on. And he provides the best he can, and he loves me and provides for me, even if he's going through this hard time. My mother doesn't see him in a positive light, but she saw her father in a very positive light, even as his wife didn't see him in a positive light, because she didn't think we just did a role reversal. And I need to look at you as the woman of the household. You took over that role that it was for a traditional woman. And now you're the woman of the household. And so all of that stuff that you're doing would have been upon me and allowing me to run my dry cleaning business 7 days a week, I guess, originally. So again, she didn't have the right mindset of saying, no, my husband's not a failure. He is business. When his business was going, she was the stay-at-home mom. And when it went down, she became the business person. Her husband became the stay-at-home dad, taking over her role with the children and the household and everything else. But again, she didn't see it that way. She could only think of him in the traditional male role. And we're having a problem, like when I was at Casey's. There's a Hispanic guy. He was one of the service managers. I forget his name, but I used to talk to him. And his wife was making a lot of money and was moving up the food chain, and they were having kids. And he said, we make financial calculations, and eventually I'm going to leave Casey's and just be the stay-at-home dad, because we're having another kid and my wife earns enough money, and the cost of daycare and everything else, it's better for me to be Mr. Mom. And so he quit Casey's and became a permanent stay-home dad. And he did everything. Like, you know, the Robin Williams movie, Mrs. Doubtfire. Really, he was the stay-at-home dad. She was making the money, and she was in the traditional male role. And this happens these days, where the female is now the breadwinner who works the majority of time out of the household. And my friend Tim Mann, he was the Mr. Mom. He showed up and took the kids to volleyball practice and everything else. And his wife was the traditional male role, the provider financially for the family. And he took over the traditional female role. And that's the Mrs. Doubtfire movie without cross-dressing. But it is a good role to explain, and Mrs. Kim didn't get that switch flipped in her brain and could only see her husband in the traditional male role, and expressed how she saw her husband as a complete failure. making the physical and the loving between the husband and wife not good. They stayed together for the children, and they stayed together to save face, but their intimacy and love for each other was suffering. So, again, this is a switch that they have to understand that now it's a different time and a different way, and we have to understand this, that sometimes it's split between male and female. They both work outside, they both provide for the household, and they use daycare and other things to fill in the spot, but they're both doing male and female roles. Someday they do the dishes, take out the trash, whatever. Next day she has to do that or cook dinner or whatever. So sometimes when you're both outside, both providing full-time, working full-time, that you're both taking a little bit of that traditional household role, and it's split between the two of you. But that's a whole different mindset as well. And you have to figure out how to navigate splitting the obligations. This day you can pick up the kids. I'm working late. These days you're working late. I'll pick up the kids. But now we have Google Calendar and other ways to communicate, because you can see what's going on with the kids' schedule at school. If they have football practice or whatever, and what time it gets out, and do they have a late bus. I used to take the late bus home because they had an athletic bus at Deerfield, one bus, and it left at, 7 at night or something. And so it was the late bus. So for all the kids that did stuff, besides athletics, if you were in the different clubs, say the chess club or whatever, you could take the late bus and it would take you home. So it went all over Deerfield. Wherever the kids got on, you had to tell them where you lived. So there was no fixed route. So he would just navigate the best course. Now you have Google GPS, and now the bus driver can just type in the addresses and then press optimize. And it'll give them an optimized path to drop each of the children off in their area. That's what the late bus, we used to tell them. I live on, Greenwood and Wilmot Road, say, and he would drop us off by Greenwood and Wilmot Road. So it went all over. The kids that get out of school right after school and take the normal bus, well, those are loaded up to pre-directional routes. But these are the kids that stay after, and so the bus had to go all over the place. And it was never full, so there was a handful of people on it because, a lot of parents picked up their kids. And some people had bicycles and bicycled home. Other people drove as well. A lot of people, once they turned 16, got... Big thing at Deerfield was parking passes. It was very hard to get a parking pass. We had more demand than they could provide. So parking passes were, at a premium. And you had to get the parking pass. I don't know if you paid for it. Probably paid for it. To have the parking pass for the semester to park in the student parking lot. And, believe me, they checked if you had parking passes. And if you tried to sneak in, like people they took their car there, and they would flag it with a ticket and tow the car. So, truly, we had our security guards, and they would check all the cars to make sure they had a parking pass. But that also prevents anything bad from happening on, because any car that shouldn't be there is removed. So again, we had to have a student parking pass and displayed in our window. So again, I'm down here, and these issues should be resolved. If this mayor is so good at what they do, working with the aldermen, like I said, the aldermen talking to the utility companies, the water companies, streets and sanitation, they should know how the sewer systems are, where the flooding happens, working and resolving flooding issues. Those issues shouldn't stay. The aldermen should be resolving them, saying, okay, we don't have enough capacity, or is the flooding issue because there is buildup of debris from leaves? Now we have to have the residents do a better job of raking their leaves. Truly, and finding the residents for not taking care of the leaves and everything, their debris. They need to rake their leaves and put it in the disposable bags and have it picked up for recycling. So again, they have to take it. So in the city of Chicago, you got to rake your leaves. You know how many leaves I had to pick up in Deerfield for all the places in Chicago? We didn't have any trees, thank God. But I cut my glass, had to dispose of the grass clippings and everything. I had to rake the yard and rake up the leaves and do all this. I had to shovel the sidewalks and clean the sidewalks, clean the curb area, clean the alley. The aldermen should be holding their residents accountable. And only if you have some kind of physical opt-out, that if you don't, the alderman should order you getting fines for not maintaining your property. The alderman driving around and looking at it and seeing what's going on and being like, those people aren't shoveling their sidewalks. Those people aren't raking their leaves, clogging the sewer, causing improper drainage. The alderman should be walking down here, whoever the freaking alderman is, and walking or driving and doing an assessment of what's going on. Is everything good with the Michigan Avenue Bridge? Truly, is the life preserver there? Yes, the life preserver's there. Some people were stealing the life preservers. Now they can put a camera on that. But that life preserver right here, right, where is it? Right there. Let's see. Let me move this a little bit. And I'm blocking the street, but whatever. Right there. What should be there? A call box. 911. You can call for emergency right there. A speaker system. You know those call boxes around the University of Chicago or DePaul? You press the button, they're lit up. That's the same. You don't get just the life preserver. You press the button, and it calls the fire department or city dispatch. And they're like, what's your emergency? It goes right to 911. 911. That's where it should go. And they're like, what's your emergency? Somebody fell in the river. I'm tossing him the life preserver. Can you send the rescue squad, the paramedics and that? Okay. Can you describe what's going on and give me details? Or they can turn on a camera on the bridge. But there should be a 911 integrated in that, and you just hit the button. Or when you pull the life preserver, it automatically calls 911. But the reason they put it out there, they don't want you jumping into the river. Throw the life preserver. That's why it's there. And press the button, 911. They know the location. It's coming right there from the bridge on Michigan Avenue. So it should be integrated. But the aldermen should be walking around and doing these things. And they should be at night and day. An alderman's job is not 9 to 5. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're not up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but they need to go out with the police and do drive-arounds at night. Oh, yeah, with the commander, lieutenant, or sergeant, and do a drive-around. I want assessments. Where are the patrols? What's going on in the area? Do we have break-ins, lootings? What is going on? So the alderman can give the police the right resources. See, the alderman gets the resources from the city for the ward. Whether it's streets and sanitation, whether it's the police force, whether it's water, gas, whatever, they get the resources. So they have to have in their little commanders, like Oscar was working for an alderman when I lived on Logan, and he's like, if you need another trash can for your building, just tell me, and I'll have him drop off another trash can. Sometimes people need more trash cans. They have more children in the house. So the one trash can doesn't do it, 2 trash cans. Some people need 3 trash cans. But also the city knows that this house, they have 5 children and 2 adults. There's 7 people there. Or they have 8 children and 2 adults, and there's 10 people living there. They're going to generate more waste. But they know that, okay, some people on the block, there's 1 person that lives in this house. They only have 1 trash can. They don't generate that much waste. So there's a give and take on where they're going to spend more or less time at their trash stops. But remember, they only pay basically how it's divided up. So some people need more, some people need less. But once it goes above a certain size building, you move away from the city, you move to private contractors, and they charge you based on weight. How much trash you actually put out. So they charge you on tonnage, and the association, say it's a 3-story, then the association has to assess people on how much trash they do. That's what they fail at our building. People throw their couches and everything in, and their beds and chairs, and it doesn't work that way. You're assessed on the amount of trash. That's why they need to know how many people live in your unit to figure out how much trash is it going to be produced by your unit, how many times are you going to flush the toilet, how much water for the shower, do you have a dishwasher, or do you wash by hand, and washing by hand, you use more water than the dishwasher. Dishwashers are designed to use very little water to conserve water. When you open up the faucet on the sink, it's a big flow of water. So even if you're rinsing something, it's using tons more water. So it uses more water when you wash dishes manually. But the whole point is the building has to figure out the utility demands and everything else. So even if they're not, the residents are paying their own bills, they need to know how the systems are being used, because pipes wear based on water flow. Do you know that? Water pipes? And when the water isn't used that much, the water sits and decay builds up in the pipes. So when the water is active, you don't get those sedimentary deposits. When the water is not active, the water tends to be more corrosive. So does the alderman know that? That where there's not a lot of usage with the water and there's not a lot of flow, that the water is more stagnant, and so it'll leave deposits and be more corrosive, so you'll get buildup on the internals of the water pipe in these areas, because the houses might be empty, like the buildings. When you have the commercial buildings and they're empty, right? And there's less flushes of the toilet and everything else, because the tanks refill from the water system. And so you have to understand that means there's less turnover. The flow of water out of the pipes into the system is more stagnant. The water sits longer. It deposits its debris internally, and you get, just like anything else. How does that work with the cardiovascular system? Oh yes, it works the same. You get buildup of plaque. That's what happens with water pipes. So the alderman is supposed to be smart. Are there a lot of electricity or little electricity? Now, it's not the same, because little electricity means the lines won't wear as fast. It's the complete opposite in that way of the water pipes. You don't get buildup and debris in that. You get the electrical lines that are going to wear out faster. They dry rot. Do you know that rubber around the electrical lines, when they're used a lot, that heat causes them to dry out faster? And when they're not used as much, and it depends on how much voltage is running through them, also depends on when I used to break open walls, and there'd be these electrical lines, and they'd be dry rotted. Oh yeah, dry rotted, ripe eventually for fire. Because the casing around the electrical lines is all dried out. So this is how electrical fires happen behind the wall, when you have very old electrical systems, that the casing protects the electricity from, insulates in that. But eventually, if it dry rods, it becomes a fuel for eventually an electrical fire. And you're like, why did that electrical fire start behind the wall? Well, it's because the wiring was so old, it dry rotted, and it eventually ignited. So the alderman, seeing these power lines, has to understand the longevity based on demand, and when the electrical systems need to be. But Commonwealth Edison can tell them that. Their research on demand through power lines and how long they last. So again, they're supposed to know all of this, and they're supposed to be the man on the street. Truly, like down here, did the aldermen come out at night, see how these bars are functioning? See how the doorman's interacting, what the crowd's like, what the police officers are doing? Just taking a walk, checking out the neighborhood, seeing what's going on. This is what they're supposed to be freaking doing. Stopping in and looking at how they're running the business. Truly, are going into the bar, and the alderman I'm talking about, going to the bar and like, wow, It seems like a lot of people are extremely drunk here. Seems like we have a potential problem. And they need to talk to the police, who needs to talk to liquor control. And they need to go in and have a talk with the owner or the manager about, it seems like you might be over-serving people. Have you had alcohol beverage training? Do your bartenders and waiters do that? Do you monitor your customers? If not, we're going to have to give you citations and we might have to shut you down. But the alderman doesn't say anything. He's just a shopper. He goes in and he's just looking around, making his notes. He goes in the water tower and walks through the mall. Says, oh, there's like 6 vacancies. The mall doesn't seem well maintained. Lots of lights are out. Sends in the building inspectors. And it says, it seems like you're not maintaining the bathrooms in the mall. This is the alderman's job. They go into the Taco Bell. And they're in there and looking around the Taco Bell. And then they go in the bathroom. And they make a note. Not cleaning the stalls and that. Sending the health inspectors. Truly. The alderman gets paid to bust their fucking ass and address the issues of the community. Now they have captains and others, and they can do those inspections, and the alderman can meet with them, but the alderman has to do rounds with them. So the CEO, and I'll give you an example, the CEO of Costco, every year he visited every single store that Costco had, and he would take notes. He look at the store. He looks as if they're maintaining, how the shelf's doing, how the employee's doing, and he would sit back and just analyze. He visited every store every year, flying all around the country. He visited every single store every year that he was CEO. He didn't sit in the fucking office. He was out in the field visiting every single fucking store. And he wanted to be there watching sales, watching what's going on, how the managers are doing, and everything else. So he would meet up with his regionals and so on. And they would go. When he landed, it's now every single store in that area is getting inspected. We used to have that with the Marriott. Our regional would come in and he would have to inspect every single Marriott hotel in his region. And believe me, we used to move huge planters and everything. And it is good. We did extra special cleaning. Our regional, he was super detailed. He'd be like a 200-pound planter. He'd be like, has that planter been moved and cleaned under? Yes, sir. We would move the planter, jack it up, move it, clean under it, clean under the planter. Truly, you got to clean the planter itself, so you hold the sides and you're cleaning the bottom of the planter. So it's not only cleaning the floor, it's cleaning the bottom of the base as well. That's dirty. If the floor is dirty, the bottom of the planter is dirty. And so we would have to move things, and everything would be torn apart and cleaned. And he would go through it with a white glove test. inspecting every inch of the hotel. And he would want to know, why is there these marks on the wall? Why aren't they taken care of? What is being done about this? What is being done about that? And so the point is, that's what an alderman's supposed to be doing. And then he sixes departments of the city on you. So he's supposed to be looking at the utility lines to see if Commonwealth Edison is maintaining them. And making sure the lines are well maintained. Making sure the gas lines are maintained. The water lines, the sewage, and everything else. And if not, he has a whole task force of people that he can get out inspecting them and finding people and motivating people. And he can have the prosecutors go after them, and he can have them arrested and charged criminally. But this is why we shouldn't have slums. Because the alderman is supposed to be meeting with the building inspectors and that. And truly, do we have rental buildings that are having issues? When is the last time you've been in these buildings? What are their issues? So, none of this negativity should exist. All the pieces are there to solve it. Like with tailgaters. You blow their fucking brains out. One way or another, it needs to end. So what's going to end it? Usually chopping off a head sends a very strong signal to others. You don't want to lose yours. You like that attached to your body, right? You like keeping the head attached to the body, right? So it sends a very strong message. And this is where it calls tough on crime. We used to study this at Gordon, constitutional economics, setting the law appropriately. And we talked about executing people. When is it necessary to execute, to send a stronger message? What do you think they did in Japan dropping the atomic bomb? It sent a stronger message. They dropped 2 of them. They believed 1 wouldn't be enough. If 1 was enough, they would have, but they decided that the Japanese wouldn't cave if 1. So they dropped 2. And what happened? The Central Command and everything got the message. Unconditional surrender. That's tough on crime. They were criminals. Why do you think we have the War Crimes Tribunal afterwards? War Crimes Tribunal. Crimes. War Crimes Tribunal. That their war was illegal and they got executed. We killed a bunch of Japanese military officers. I think hanging them. Not court-martial means shooting them. But either way, some committed suicide. Others we tried and killed. Some we tried and put in prison. But again, you got to figure out 10 years, going on 11 years of this. Obviously, there's a failure to communicate. And we have to resolve the failure to communicate. Like in Cool Hand Luke. So we need to resolve this issue of the failure to communicate. So what are these aldermen doing in the city of Chicago? And this goes across the country. If you live in a rural area and you're the mayor, you need to visit the farms. You need to have people inspecting the soil, inspecting the crops, We don't want other dust bowls. You have to know what types of pesticides they're using. Truly. And this means the county board needs to be meeting with their mayors and seeing what's going on in their different, like Cook County. They have Park Ridge, City of Chicago, Palatine. I don't know if Palatine, but Buffalo Grove and many others. And the county board's supposed to be meeting with all those different mayors so they can understand what's going on in the county. What's your problem? Is there a problem between Wheeling and Buffalo Grove? Maybe it's an interstate commerce problem, intrastate commerce, between goods moving from Wheeling to Buffalo Grove. There could be some kind of trade imbalance. Truly. It's just not at the international level. We're talking at the local level, between the wards. There can be different. You want the GDP, the GNP of the ward. You want to see what's going on, where the labor is moving. There's a freaking stop sign right here. Rolling the stop sign. There was just a cop back there. Like I said, it's a city where they don't fear law enforcement. They don't fear getting punished. They don't. So, if they did, they wouldn't do it. The first thing you're taught in the Bible is to fear God. To fear the punishment. But the funny thing is, in the Christian church, we only talk the love of Jesus Christ. And some reason, they forget about the fire and brimstone that God can be extremely ruthless with his punishment. And the first thing you teach them is to fear God. Because you don't want to end up in the backside burning in hell. So you should grow up fearing hell. And the thought of going to hell should make you shake in your boots. But somehow the pastors, all they do is say, it's okay, your sins will be forgiven, my son, it's okay. No one burns in hell. If you listen to the pastors, everybody is forgiven and no one is condemned. Everybody is saved. And I'm telling you, very few people go to heaven. Very few people are sanctified. Most everybody perishes or burns in eternal damnation. So, most people are condemned. They don't die sanctified. So, there is no heaven without sanctification. So the Spirit won't reside inside you, the Holy Spirit. You're effed. So everybody thinks they're going to heaven. I'm trying to change it. There's a possibility that, yes, you all can go to heaven. But they don't sell it that way. They don't sell that you have to turn away from your sins and that you have to repent and atone and not go back. Because it's all false if you go back. You never meant it in the first place. So the point is, they're not saving you. They're lying to you. And they've been sold out by the devil. They're suckers. All the pastors and priests. I go and listen to their services and everything else, and they're so much unbelievably suckering their congregation. And most pastors and priests, they're not sanctified either. They burn in hell. Most nuns burn in hell as well. Just to let you know that all those people that think they're going because they're clergy, most of them burn as well. So a lot of people go to hell. And I already put this all out. It's absolutely biblically grounded, absolute biblical truth, but they don't tell you that. So you don't fear your eternal soul. You think it's okay to sin and that it's all forgiven and that you're going to heaven. That's why no one fears hell, because everybody thinks they're going to heaven. It's just a forgiven that I am saved and I will go to heaven. Well, no. So, more than likely, Mark Job and all them, I don't think they're going to be saved. Because they have to do a lot more than they were doing to be sanctified. And I didn't see him out on the streets. I didn't see him doing these initiatives, calling on the congregation, truly going out to individual homes, sitting there with the elderly. Truly, it takes a lot more. It's a very, very big responsibility. And so they think they can show up, give a sermon, and they're all good. At least David Rim, he came out to our small group. But he needs to sit down. As I used to talk about going to the rabbi's home. Like with my friend Eric. I said, I want to break bread with your rabbi. Sit down for dinner and have a heart-to-heart. They're supposed to go out there and meet with their congregation in their home, see what's going on in their home. They're supposed to look behind the veil, showing up and saying, can I sit down and have a drink with you and stop over? And want to know what's going on with you and your family. They're supposed to make house calls. That's how they used to do it. So don't say it was no, the good ones did. The ones that were sanctified did. They knew what was going on. They knew, okay, these have so on and so forth. Like I was listening to Bill Gates, he used to memorize all the license plates of his employees. But all these people, they became highly successful because they were very active. They stayed abreast. Every week, Hank Greenberg, running the largest insurance company in the world, he had all the heads of all of his divisions. He met with them, and he knew what was going on with every single division of his company. And he met with them weekly. And he would go through their reports. And he ran a very tight ship. So Elliot Spitzer got him to resign, but before that, AIG had huge swap positions. AIG sold a lot of insurance for swaps. Do you know that? AIG made a fortune in selling insurance for swaps. And again, but Hank Greenberg knew what was going on. The new CEO disbanded the risk management meetings. Hank Greenberg didn't. The city of Chicago, do they meet every week about risk management? The mayor, Brandon Johnson, with each of the aldermen? The one meeting, that particular meeting, is about just strictly risk management. What is going on? What is our risks and awards? What is our exposure? I want the financial ledger. Oh, I want the aldermen. They have to give their profit and loss statements, their projected expenditures. I want to know, when do you expect that we'll need to repave the streets in your ward? When is that expected expenditure? How much is it costing for patching the streets? I want the financial statements. Who is the CFO? The Chief Financial Officer for the ward. This is why it's not run right. It's incorporated. It needs to be run like a fine oil machine. I need the numbers. I need to know what your projected budget is for next year. And why is it going to increase in this? Where can we get cost savings in the ward? How can next year's budget actually go down, not up? Or how can we save in a particular area and just reallocate from streets and sanitation to the Department of Water to upgrade the water system? So we can move money around. This year, we don't need it really at streets and sand. We can move money from streets and sand to the Department of Water. So we can take some of the budget from streets and sanitation and use it for the Department of Water. Because this year we can save in certain places with streets and sanitation. We don't need any street repairs or potholes. It looks like it'll be very minimum. And so we can allocate some of the money to the Department of Water. So we don't need to increase the budget. But that's what they're supposed to be doing. So who's running the numbers in the ward? And they need to be held accountable. How much tax revenue? Truly, how much is coming in on property taxes? Working with the county assessor, but the city Department of Revenue, the alderman should know, how much am I bringing in property tax? How much am I bringing in sales tax? How much am I bringing in licensing revenue? Truly, business licensing revenue and all that. So my profit and loss statements now, that's the income statement. The other part is the assets and liabilities. Now you're moving over to the income statement. Your P&L. Seeing where things are. So again, they need to run this Gangnam Market. Oh, that's cool. I never saw that before. Huh. I gotta stop in Gangnam Market. Okay. Gangnam style. Yeah, I like things Korean, especially women. But again, Empire Ice right here. You can't see it, but I gotta get gas. But Empire Ice anyways. I'll turn around. I used to order a lot of ice from them when I was at Baja. But the funny thing is, people would make a mistake and they forget to tell them that we need bar ice. But the funny thing is, Empire Ice should have known that we're a bar and we need bar ice. They would bring us non-bar ice, like you get in the, 7-Eleven, those big blocks. That isn't bar ice. We used it, but it didn't work well with the glasses. But we ran out of ice, and we used to cut them checks for thousands and thousands of dollars because we had so much business. Our ice machines just couldn't keep up at times. So we had to buy a lot of ice from them. But the person ordering it sometimes would forget to tell them that it has to be bar ice. And you get the wrong ice. But we took it anyways and paid them because we needed it now. And when they brought the wrong ice, it didn't matter. So we took, a few truckloads of ice, actually. I don't know how many thousands of dollars of ice that we bought from them, but tens of thousands per year. But what Empire Ice can do is just install and maintain the ice machines in places. They can lease ice machines, sell ice machines, and maintain ice machines. Like at Baja, yeah, we had 7, 8, 9, 10 ice machines. I mean, we had a ton of ice machines. But that's what they can do. So there's ice machines at all these businesses, and they can get into the installation and maintenance. And they can lease ice machines, and they can upgrade your ice machines. You can purchase additional ice machines. Some you buy, maybe some you want to lease. So you can get a mixture of purchase and lease, and they can get the maintenance contracts for them. So that's what Empire Ice could do. But they didn't, but we needed somebody to regularly do maintenance on our ice machines. There's filters and everything that need to be changed. The ice machines need to be cleaned. Truly, the systems and everything else needs to be inspected and cleaned. And so they can get into all of that. So they can do all the Starbucks, maybe get the contract for them. You know, the barista, I met a guy when I was at Kendall College. He went around and cleaned all the barista machines. He had a professional cleaning service for coffee shops and their barista machines. He used to do Argo tea and clean all their barista machines. So, again, I'm not going to go into his relationship with Argo, but it wasn't good from Argo's point. They weren't good with being good about paying their bills in a timely fashion. But the whole point is, he had all these accounts with these different coffee houses cleaning their barista machines. Truly, going in, adjusting them, tuning them, cleaning them. He was a professional, and all he did was barista machines. That's all his company did, is go in, inspect, fine-tune, and clean the barista machines, making sure they're working correctly. So this is high-level inspection, cleaning, and maintenance, so they don't break down. You don't want the barista machine breaking down. So his thing was preventive maintenance for barista machines, keeping them in good working order. So if one went down, he would fix it. But his job was to maintain them so they didn't go down, replace parts that are worn before they break. Preventive maintenance for barista machines. And he had a really good business. He was making a lot of money doing just barista machines. So that's what I mean with Empire Ice and ice machines. Inspecting them, cleaning them, doing preventive maintenance. And that means changing filters and everything else, making sure everything is working at its optimal. So, anyways, up to go home. But I hate getting mad, but I am particularly have this extreme anger towards the black community for the things that they've been doing to me in Chicago over the last 10 years. That has been highly, incredibly negative. Second is Hispanic. They've done a lot of things, but not as much. I did a lot for the Hispanic community. And believe me, I did a lot, but I did more for the black community. So when they do negative to me, it really pisses me off. I did a lot for the Hispanic community, but I did a lot more for the black community. So I sunk a lot of my life, and my life, not only my money, but my life. Time is life. I sunk a lot of time and money into them, much more than any community. I gave to them the most, including blood. I would go down for blood drives on the south side, and a city in need, what did I say? I will bleed for a city in need. And I posted a statement on my Facebook, but I used to do this for years because they had lots of gunshot and burn victims and that. So I donated blood on the south side, to help out with their blood banks. Now, it's missing the melon in that, but still, the plasma and everything else can treat burn victims and so on. So I did this, but I donated blood to all communities, white communities, Hispanic communities, Asian communities, and that went to treat their burn victims and everything else. I'm going on 6 decades of donating blood to take care of people that need white blood cells, red blood cells, plasma, platelets. And that went to all communities, Arabs and everything else. And God watched. And I don't know one person that has donated blood consistently since they've been a child, basically. And it was from childhood. So, I don't get it. So again, that goes to every community. So it didn't matter if you're black, Asian, white, Pacific Islander, Arab, Native American. It went to them all. I don't know where my blood ended. But it was there, and I was providing. And year in, year out, decade in, decade out. So, God watched. That was something that was used by communities here, and they shipped blood out to other places. And so, I was bleeding for them all. Young, old. It didn't matter. Did Jesse Jackson? Did Al Sharpton? And so God watches this ability to touch everybody, providing for everybody. And that's why I donated blood. It was one of the ways I could touch everybody, no matter where they were coming from. No matter where they were coming from, I was providing something that could address incredible amounts of different issues. My blood type has that. When you break it down into its components, not many people need my blood per se as whole blood, but when you break it down into its components, everybody can use what I have, in a way. So, again, how many of these people that go around here have bled for the world? Truly have sacrificed themselves for every race, for every age, for everybody. So my work is self-evident. And so there's a reason. How many pastors, how many priests, truly, how many of them do these things consistently? How many of them were willing to sacrifice on a continuous basis, year in and year out, trying to touch as many people as they could, domestically and globally, in a positive manner? But I did. So you hold these people up and praise them, and you curse me. And you don't understand. It's self-evident to God that he's going to end you. So you think it's a joke with tailgating me and everything else. You think my threats are idle. Well, one day you'll be dead. And there's nothing you can do to reverse it. And so, truly, God knows when you're final. And there's no going back. And he's going to slaughter you. But I grew up, the first thing, understood to fear God, to respect him and his abilities. And that's why we have all these people, they have these false hopes. And it's a bunch of bullshit. They go out there and they keep on sinning like the LGBTQ, failing to repent. A minor sin can become a major sin through repetition. What is in a one-off, here or there, not a deadly sin, but when you aggregate it and you do it over a lifetime, it becomes a deadly sin. But they don't tell you that, do they? So time amplifies, as I put out on Tumblr, that time amplifies. And the longer you do things negative, the greater the sin. So you're a serial killer and you've been doing serial killer like the Golden State, 40 years or whatever. You're going to burn unbelievably. And he happened to be a police officer. But the funny thing is, the writing was on the wall who he was. So they need to go back and catch all those cops that did the drop guns that said the perpetrator had a gun and shot. I want all of them too. I want all the officers that did all the illegal actions in the past. We need to clean up everything. And they need to be charged. And their pensions need to be stripped, in my opinion. They're going to have a come to Jesus moment. But the whole point is that this sends a message to all law enforcement that you're not going to get away with it. So if you lie on the stand, if you cover something up, like the officers that covered up the murder of the kid on Division Street, they covered it up. So these things can't be stood for. So it's not going after just individuals. It's going after government officials from the top all the way down. Prosecutors like Elliot Spitzer, they got him removed from governor, but he needs to be charged for all his wrongful acts when he was a prosecutor. anyone he falsely prosecuted, which Hank Greenberg was one of them. What the fuck? So, again, they need to go back and punish Elliot Spritzer for his wrongful prosecutions. So, anyways, this is my rant for today. Kind of like Mark Levin, but unedited, where I'm using profanity. He doesn't use profanity, but he does yell and scream on his show. If you've ever listened to Mark Levin, he gets very boisterous, very loud. He yells and screams. And he uses the word Republicans. Like when Republicans mess up, he calls them Republicans. They're disgusting to him. Disgusting Republicans. He's a Republican, but the ones that screw up, he calls them out and calls them disgusting Republicans. And so I watched him air out a lot of things on different Republicans that were doing things they shouldn't. And he would put them on their national show, meaning mention their names in that, and he would call them Republicans. So he was fair and balanced. He rips on Democrats, but he also is fair. If a Republican does something wicked, he is all over it. Even more pissed that a Republican did it, because that makes him look like shit. He's a Republican. So he takes it even to a higher level than he does for a Democrat. He rips on them harder. So rebuking, that's what Mark Levin does. So he'll rebuke Republicans substantially. Take it to them. You know, trying to force them to repent and clean up and protect the party. So again, I'm wondering if this city, and this goes for all the places, if we're going to move to a better country where our government officials actually do their job, and that means the Department of Health in rural areas, they have to visit farms. They have to do soil samples. They have to understand pesticides and do air samples and all that, understanding what's going on in their community. So the county departments of health need that information so they can work with governments to set proper zoning and other things that make sure that things are handled appropriately within agriculture. That they're not destroying the environment and making themselves sick and making others sick. They're not over farming the land and destroying the soil. They're not sucking all the water out of the underground aquifers and collapsing, because it causes shifts in soil, and collapsing underground aquifers can cause earthquakes. And it also helps the ground superheat because the water acts as a cooling system. Yes, the water acts as a cooling system. And when you take out all the water, it becomes ultra hot. And that can cause volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and all kinds of things. Desertification. And so you have to be careful about taking too much underground water. It's a cooling system. That's why it's there. So, again, it wasn't there for man to drink. It was designed there to cool the crust so the crust stays stable. But obviously, taking some of it, that's fine. But taking all of it is a serious issue. And they finally figured that out. That doing those wells might not be so good. But before, they didn't know that. And they think anything under the ground they can just tap in and deplete, and it has no ramifications. That's not how it works. So now they're trying to refill the aquifers. Trying to replenish what they took. You know, shrubs and trees and all that leach down into the soil, and those underground aquifers push moisture up through the bottom of the soil that feeds the roots for lots of vegetation. And it keeps the soil moist and irrigated and so on. And California having a lot of forest fires and that can be related to the draining of the underground aquifers. Truly. Because the trees can't get enough water. When there's droughts and not enough water from above, the roots reach down deeper to get water deeper in the soil. Do you know that? That the roots will grow deeper? If the soil on top is dry and there's not enough rainfall, the roots dive deeper into the soil, reaching down deeper into the soil to get more moisture, because the tree wants to survive. So, taking away those underground aquifers takes away the moisture. And that means you're probably starting your own forest fires in California that don't need to be there because you depleted the underground aquifers. So, again, usually the forest system adapts to prevent forest fires. But if you take away the underground water, you take away the system's ability to adjust and adapt. And so I believe if you replenish those underground aquifers in California, that you will see the forest, even when you're not getting a lot of rain, the trees will stay green in that. And guess what? That'll help keep the atmosphere more stable. The amount of humidity, and also help with getting rid of the smog and other issues in California, cleaning up pollution. So if the trees stay healthier and stay properly hydrated, they work more efficiently. Just like dehydration on the body shuts it down and the efficiency decreases, it's the same way with trees. And if you take away the underground water or deplete it heavily, then if there's not surface water, then the trees are screwed and you get the forest fires and everything. So a lot of that comes from depleting underground aquifers or poisoning the aquifers. Is another way that destroys the trees, and the trees get sick because the underground water is contaminated with all kinds of pollutants that wash into the underground aquifers and contaminate it. And these people driving around like, I don't get it. Bad to the bone. Well, then you burn in hell. That's It's your choice. But again, I'll look up on Google. I'm going to end this video, but again, they have to think about what the topsoil's going to do in Libya when they drain off the underground aquifers. How much hotter is the sand going to get? Because when you deplete those underground wells, it keeps the topsoil from getting so hot, even in the desert. And you take out the underground aquifers in Saudi Arabia and that, it can cause deserts to get exponentially hotter, and that can cause even greater global warming because the sand will store more heat during the day and radiate it at night, and the nights will get hotter. The underground aquifers, even in deserts, maintains a cooler surface temperature. So I don't get it. And I want these motherfuckers killed. Fucking speeding around here. Like, where's all the state troopers? Where is the fear of the Lord? They don't have the fear of God. So, are they in the fear of the Lord? No. But, okay. So, how about the Illinois state troopers? As I did the report on all the accidents on the highway, this has incredibly high rates of accidents, high rates of drunken driving and speeding and everything else. So you think the state troopers would be heavily working this area, busting all these people. I put out the report. I took it from the internet, put out the report, and that you think you would have an incredibly heavy presence of state troopers because they need to work these areas that have higher rates of, crashes and fatalities, higher rates of incidents. But I don't see them. They just ignore this area. And I don't get it. This is where they should be working the greatest, and they can catch people trafficking all kinds of things. And they need to pull over the semis and inspect them before they go in the city and coming out of the city. So, I don't get it. I truly don't get how they're allocating any of this stuff. I don't get what the county boards do. I don't know what the sheriffs do. I don't know what they're doing with the state police. I don't know what they're doing with the local. But it seems like they're doing a pretty shitty job across the board. Because think about all the terrorist incidents and all the bombings and everything else. Well, they haven't been doing a really good job. And then you think about all the cartels, how the local law enforcement, sheriffs, and state police have been unbelievably ineffective, and they rely just on the DEA, the, Drug Enforcement Agency. Well, they need an effective state, county, and local, but they haven't. Our narcotics officers, City of Chicago has narcotics officers. I would assume Cook County does. I know the Illinois State Police have narcotic officers. They're supposed to be coordinating with the DEA. So, again, I don't get it. And so, weak local, county, and state law enforcement makes federal very ineffective. But if you got good local, county, and state, then federal fills in the gaps and can be highly effective. Because federal can go and watch things between states. And so they know if things are moving in from Indiana or moving in from Missouri or moving in from Wisconsin into Illinois. And so they can see the intrastate commerce. But they need the local authorities to be on the interstate commerce. So, intra and inter. So anyways, between states and within states. And that's where the local is supposed to be informing the DEA and being their ground troops so they can watch the national movements. And they watch it coming in from the borders. Like, is it moving through Texas? Is it moving through California? Is it moving through Florida? Is it coming down like the Chicago Blackhawks player? He was bringing down a lot of cocaine from Canada. He would put it in with his hockey equipment. When the Chicago Blackhawks played games in Canada, he would load up cocaine into his hockey equipment and then bring it back to the United States. Lots of kilos of cocaine. So I don't get it. So another guy right here should be shot and killed. But that's okay. God hears my request. So upon his death, and that's why you think the Holy Spirit lives within, the Holy Spirit hears everything I say. And so upon their death, God will execute them. Eternal damnation. I don't take it as a game. My life is no game. So may that person be burned in eternal damnation. So when I say executed, I mean God's going to kill them. So when they die, they're going to be burned. As they disrespect my life, and you read in the Bible, it'll tell you that you will be burned for eternity. It's blasphemy, and you're fried. But that's your choice. So, with death, there's no repentance. There's some things you can't repent for. That's why the point of the 7 deadly sins. But there are points of no atonement. Not everything can be repentant. Like when you murder somebody, truly, and they're dead, we were talking, you rotted the body, you buried the corpse, there's no repenting it. There's no reversing it. You can't give back the life once it's taken. So there's no undoing it. It's final. So there's certain things there is no forgiveness for. And so not everything can be forgiven. But anyways, aquifers, yeah, in the desert, they don't understand. And so things can get very, very bad for them on the surface. But I'll leave this here.